Morning. Today I am going to share a few resources with you all that I found helpful when I began my journey of listening for God. Now, first, you need to know that I have trouble with discipline and routine. I am not an expert by any stretch of the imagination in spiritual practices or spiritual disciplines. If anything, I'm an expert at failing at them. But the real point is not about success or failure. The real point of them is about consistency and perseverance. Really, what they're about is getting back up and getting right back to it again. So, if you're like me, I've found it more helpful to think of them as rhythms rather than routines. You don't have to get them exactly right or do the exact same steps every time. It's more like a pattern with broad brushstrokes rather than a checklist. And that was a beautiful thing I discovered about spiritual practices, is that there's so much more grace and freedom in them than people realize. So, for example, I am trying to establish a rhythm of coming close to God at the beginning of my day, and then going out and throughout the day checking back in and heading back out, and then closing my day by coming back in at the end. My weeks are also on a rhythm. And the one that I'm working on right now is ending or beginning with Sabbath, depending on your theological perspective on that. And I'm also trying to establish a monthly rhythm as well, which I'll talk about at some point down the line. Now, a helpful tool in establishing these habits was something I discovered by B.J. Foggs, who's a researcher and professor at Stanford. He talks about something called tiny habits and how to establish new ones. And that's what spiritual practices really are, after all. They're just habits. We all already have certain habits, even undisciplined people like me. So it's just a matter of evaluating my current habits and deciding what I need to keep and what I need to toss, and then establishing new ones that are more beneficial. Now, I can tell you sometimes I get a little overeager and I try to do a slew of new habits all at once because they sound so good. Now, I can tell you that this does not go well, at least not for me. So, try to begin with one tiny habit. And the process for a tiny habit is described at his website, which I'll put a link to in the description below. But essentially, the nugget is that you begin with something so tiny, it's almost ridiculous, and it's impossible to not do. And then you anchor that to something you're already doing. And then you celebrate when you've done it. So it marks a beginning and an end. And you summarize each habit with a statement. So, for example, my first tiny habit statement was, after my alarm goes off, that's the anchor, I will do my stretches in bed while listening to a devotional on my Alexa. And then I will celebrate by ending in my favorite stretch, child's pose. Now, sometimes I fall back asleep while I'm even holding my stretch. You could consider that a failure, but it's only a failure if I stop there. So what happens when I finally realize what I'm doing and I wake up again is I just continue on as if I had never left. And I finish my stretches, I finish my devotional, and I end with my child's pose. Now, the newest tiny habit that I'm working on is this one. After I get dressed, I will sit with Jesus for 1 minute. I'm still deciding on a celebration action, but I'll find one eventually. But it is important to mark the end of your habit and to celebrate it. I like to call this habit practicing the presence of God. I know it's not exactly the same thing as what Brother Lawrence talks about in his classic book called Practicing the Presence of God, but that's okay. Some might even call it meditation. And if you're uncomfortable with that word meditation, then you can call it meeting Jesus. You can call it whatever you want. It's your habit. So I'll walk you through what I do, but just know that it's an example. And you do what works best for you. So let's try it. First, get in a comfortable place again. Make sure you turn off your phone, remove any distractions, and begin to breathe nice and deeply again. You can use the box breathing from last week that we discussed and experienced, but you don't have to. Just begin to notice your breath and make it slow and relaxed. Now, as you close your eyes, picture a happy place. Where are you? What sounds do you hear? What smells do you smell? What do you feel? For me, I like to imagine that I am floating in a raft just off the shore of a deserted Hawaiian beach. I can hear the sound of the waves lapping against the shore. I can smell the salt air. I can feel the warmth of the sun beaming down on me as I trail my fingers through the cool water. Try to engage all of your senses as you picture yourself in your happy place. Next, invite Jesus to be with you right now and picture him with you. Where is he? Where are you? What is Jesus doing? What are you doing? You might envision him wrapping you in a big hug. I like to picture myself leaning against him and laying my head on his chest. If you find it too difficult to picture Jesus, then you can just picture yourself in your happy place, or even just stare at the back of your eyelids. I know that sounds weird, but this can actually help you focus, especially if you're not into the whole imagination thing. And now, just rest in his presence as you breathe. And we'll do this for 1 minute. I'll set a timer. Just remember, if a thought interrupts you at any time, just notice it and let it float away as you turn back to Jesus. And now we celebrate. You can do a fist pump, yes, or a happy dance, or stretch and say, yes, good job. This is a great way to start developing any spiritual practice or habit that you like. For more of my thoughts on meditation and meeting Jesus, visit my blog at tinyurl.com/Yo's blog. I'll put that in the description below, and also a link to some awesome little videos from Headspace. They're only about 1 minute each, and they help me understand meditation and learn how to do it in a really fun, easy way. And remember, we learn best in community, so I'd love to hear from you in the comments about how this experience went for you. I'll put some questions below that you can answer if that helps you process this. Have a great day and happy habit making. Bye.